before we unleash the toys for The Force Awakens, which is kind of amazing. Now, these gentlemen to the left of me have been here since day one of events like this. And I'm excited to sit down, we'll talk some toys with them, we'll take some questions. We got a ton of questions via Twitter and Instagram, and they're all coming in. But ladies and gentlemen, let's give it up for Steve Sansweet and Jeff Carlisle. Now, does anybody not know who Steve is? We have one guy. Well, let me talk to you personally. Steve is obviously a very popular man. He's in charge of Rancho, Obi-Wan Inc. And all these toys that you have walked into Toys R Us and seen in the display cases, they're his, which is amazing. And I have a feeling if someone makes the right offer, he might just give in tonight.
I don't think so.
And we're talking if you have a few millions in the bank account. So, and the cool thing about today, and Steve, you were telling me upstairs too, do you have almost like a little over 250,000 pieces of Star Wars?
A lot over 250,000, but we have about 350,000 different Star Wars items at Rancho Obi-Wan, and we're in the Guinness World Records book as the largest Star Wars. Who else would be as crazy?
You're number one. So see that you told me there's one piece that you have your eyes on tonight.
I'm not going to tell anybody.
All right.
Because it's a very limited piece.
Oh, it's a very limited piece.
And I have to run over and get it. It costs $149. It's battery operated, and it rolls.
And it's kind of cool.
BB-8.
Now we know Jeff as well as a fan favorite. He has created many of things that you've seen. He's illustrated. He's pretty much done. If you've walked by something that was drawn or created by Star Wars, Jeff has had some type of hand in it. To some degree.
I don't know if I go that far, but I have drawn a lot.
Let me go that far for you.
Okay, well that's fine.
Fair enough.
I have done some drawing and a lot of more Star Wars.
And of course, both gentlemen here are very sanctioned by Lucasfilms, which is incredible. I mean, who else would want to work for Lucasfilms as well? Anyone?
It seems to be a widespread fantasy.
Yes.
Well, I think, have you been to the ranch itself?
Well, I worked for Lucasfilm for 15 years. I was head of fan relations and director of content management. So I worked at Skywalker Ranch, Big Rock Ranch, and the Presidio, which is the current headquarters of Lucasfilm.
I mean, have you guys, aside from pictures, ever been?
No.
Oh, you have, sir. Right? Pretty incredible, I assume. So, can you just describe just the ranch and everything for those that haven't been there, except for this one gentleman, which is ironic enough. You should be up here with us. What it's like just being there.
Okay. Well, since Steve, had worked there for many years, when I went out and visited, because I went out and I did the Presidio and also went out to Skywalker Ranch. Part of me was, since most of the operations had moved to the Presidio, part of me was a little more, excited and impressed to be there. But there's something about the ranch. You get out you have to go into Lucas Valley. You have to cross the bridge. You have to go into Lucas Valley. Yeah, exactly.
Not named for George, by the way.
No.
Named for a cattleman in the late 1800s.
And you go through the gates, and you follow the path down, and then you make it all the way, and then you are there at the big house. And you get out there, and I'm thinking, oh yeah, cool, this is cool. I've worked for them for a long time. I can keep this together. And I'm just getting this giddy feeling. I'm just like, oh yeah, this is so great. And then you go in and you start to see all of the amazing artwork. And being an illustrator and a long time fan of illustration, seeing a Maxfield Parrish, painting full size, just on a mantle, walking through and seeing the amazing, one of the most fantastic reference libraries for motion pictures that's ever existed, under one of those beautiful pieces of stained glass for the roof that's ever been done. So I'm very impressed. But still, you know, it's like, oh, you know, hey, it's arts and crafts style, you know, it's like visiting grandma's house. It's like, okay, it's a very cool grandma's house. I'm trying to keep it all together. And the person who was giving me the tour said like, hey, do you want to see the screening room in the basement? I was like, sure, yeah, absolutely. They open a door, and hanging in the doorway going down to the stairs, they have the Style C poster from the original motion picture. Now, some of you may know this as the circus poster. And what this is it is a Flash Gordon style illustration that is on top of different other pieces, like a torn Obi-Wan illustration and everything like that. And seeing this thing in books and everything, I thought, well, this is the most amazing illustration I've ever seen. What they don't tell you is it was actually about 6 different illustrations, all put on an actual board, pasted and everything like that. So I'm sitting there and my mouth just drops like, And then you walk down the stairs and they have this, you know, beautiful screening area. And along the walls, you're like, oh, they have the prints of all of Drew Struzan's Star Wars posters, the re-release ones and the prequels. No, those are the originals. And I'm walking up to it and I'm looking and I'm seeing that glorious triptych that he did for the special edition release, and my mouth is just hanging open. And I'm there with our good friend Daniel Falconer, who's from New Zealand, who is also another fantastic artist. And we just sat there and looked at each other, and it was like going to church. It was like being in the Sistine Chapel. We thought we were going to cry.
In other words, Jeff left a trail of slobber all over Skywalker Ranch.
And I shuffled
Well,
along.
back to the back. Did you cry though?
You know what? I didn't cry until I got to Richard Ansel's Raiders of the Lost Ark coaster, which was the original. Now, here's the deal. Richard Ansel did 2 posters for Raiders of the Lost Ark. He did one for the initial release. He did one for the re-release in '82. Spielberg kept the re-release one, and George kept the original one. That's the one where Indy has the whip over his shoulder. And again, I'm looking at it, and I realize that outside of the painting where he's holding it over, all of the other bits of art in it is paste up, which is stuck to the painting. And there's that little part of it where Indy is going down this rope down to get down, and it's literally a piece of string that's been poked through the picture, and I'm just sitting there staring at it, and a tear started to well up, because I have been drawing, that particular drawing, since I was, I don't know, 8 or 9 years old, over and over. I think I have drawn that illustration, I don't know, 100, 200 times, and that killed me. That just
Did
absolutely
they show you the editing bay? Because that's where all the prequels were edited by George and Ben Burtt.
Yep.
So that's right around the corner from the theater. And this is George's small theater as opposed to the Stag Theater, which is in Skywalker Sound. It's a beautiful ranch. It's built with employees in mind. It is now mostly vacant. We're all hoping that George fills all these beautiful buildings with new production teams who will want to come up there, work at Skywalker Ranch, Skywalker Sound, and do their movies.
People and everything like that, so I'm all primed for it. But I'm 4, I can't, read. So the house lights go down, and this is such a concrete memory for me. And the blue words come up on the stage. So my dad leans over in a very quiet voice. He goes like, "A long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away." And I'm like, okay. Star Wars, it comes out, and he goes on and reads the entire crawl for me. So every time I've watched Star Wars my entire life, I hear my dad's voice reading me a story.
Aww.
So, okay, yeah. So my dad took me to see the movie, and and I was at that age where I couldn't stop drawing. So instead of drawing on the walls, as I would do, my mom would lead me with a piece of paper over to a table, and I'd get started on it. And so I recently found drawings that I did of Chewbacca, R2-D2, and C-3PO, and they're scribbles. They're really scribbles, and I didn't have photographs to copy off of. But within a few years, when I started having, the storybooks and stuff like that, and you would copy the same picture over and over, because you only had a few pictures. You had the ones that appeared in the storybooks or in the magazines, like Starlog. Starlog, you have to understand, for our generation, was the internet. Starlog, Cinefantastique, and some of those other magazines, that was where you got your movie news. And so when those pictures would come out, you would just stare at them. You would burn holes in your retinas just staring at these like, I want to jump in there. I don't know, I want to get to that movie. I can't wait until this movie comes out. And so my whole life was all about anticipation and all about excitement. And so when I was about 7, I started drawing things that were much closer and being able to do things that looked a little bit more like the photo reference. And I've never stopped drawing Star Wars. When there were Star Wars things in production, I was still drawing Star Wars and imagining what new Star Wars was going to look like. And then I was in art school when George announced that he was going to be making new Star Wars. And I knew that if I couldn't get in and actually work on the movies, then, although I was going to try, let's face it, if I couldn't get in and actually work on the movies, then I wanted to work on things that helped support the movies. I wanted to work on books. I wanted to work on magazines. I wanted to work on role-playing games. I wanted to work on sketch cards, even though I didn't know what sketch cards were. And I wanted to do all of these things because I was going to be drawing this stuff anyway. I might as well get paid for it.
At least that's what your parents told you.
That's what they, yeah. It's like,
is actually something that really ties Star Wars and Lucasfilm to the fans. And Star Wars was really the first movie that went out and talked to the fans directly back in 1976. Today it just seems like, oh, you know, at San Diego Comic-Con, New York Comic-Con, all the movie companies go and they bring their celebrities and stars. It wasn't that way. But in 1976, a guy named Charlie Lippincott, who's head of licensing and PR and marketing and everything else, said, we need to bring this to the fans. And so they went to 4 conventions in the summer of 1976. And there are photos from 2 of those conventions, San Diego Comic-Con, which was 6 years old, and Worldcon, which was in Kansas City that year. And they brought props and they showed slides. Mark Hamill showed up at Kansas City. But there was a banner that was at both conventions. And this was a banner that had an old-style Star Wars logo and a piece of art on it that was done by Ralph McQuarrie, the famous concept artist who really designed the look of Star Wars. And we're going back to a lot of that today. And this was Starkiller. It was one of the composite characters that George came up with at the very beginning, one of the first drafts of the script. And this became Luke Skywalker, a little bit of Obi-Wan, a little bit of Han Solo. And Ralph McQuarrie was over visiting Rancho Obi-Wan about 8 years ago before he passed away and said, oh, I remember painting that banner. And I said, wait a second, you hand-painted a banner for a convention? He said, oh yeah, I did anything they asked me to do. I was happy to do it. And besides, I still like that logo better than the one they came up with. So, having that recollection, having a piece of Ralph McQuarrie there, and he was such a fantastic guy. I first met him in '91 when I was doing my first Star Wars book. And to have something from him and tying Star Wars back to the fans, and Lucasfilm has always been very conscious of its fan base from the very beginning through the current time.
Now let's take some questions from the audience. Yes.
The question was when I started buying the toys, and yeah, I have this collector gene. I collected baseball cards and comic books, but I loved science fiction growing up, and I started collecting old Japanese space toys. And then 6 months later, Star Wars came out. So as part, and I loved it. I was blown away by it, like we all were. And as part of the space toy collection, I bought Star Wars items off the shelf, many of them from Toys R Us, and just kept buying. And then when Empire Strikes Back came out, that cemented the deal for me, and my collection just veered totally towards Star Wars and all of the Star Wars movies. And so, yeah, I opened all my original figures and eventually replaced them on the
I'm surprised there's no gasp.
Yeah. I play with my stuff too. I try to keep some things in the box, but I'll tell you, there are some toys here tonight which I'm going to tear open and play with because they're so cool.
I brought it with me at the strip. If you came to the art show, the art setup, when you got the early bird certificate, there were 2 things that you would get. You got the first original 4 characters, but also you could send away and get a standee base that had a background on it, and you could put the first 12 figures up on it. And technically, it was the very first playset that Kenner made for Star Wars. And so I've had that for almost my entire life. I have it sitting with the figures up on my desk in my office all the time. So I carefully took the figures off and packaged it up, and I brought it out with me. And so when I did the art show, the Art Academy today, I wanted to have them with me as my totems, So I set them up on my table, and that is probably the thing that I could never possibly get rid of.
At the workshop today, did you see any potential from anyone that came by?
I saw a lot of potential, and that was one of the things that made me very excited, because when you were asking me about the first drawings that I did, I was looking at the artwork that these kids were doing, and some of the ones who were about the same age as us, they were so much better than with me. I was so jealous.
Jeff is a good.
Star Wars begin, and why is it so special to you?
Well, Star Wars. My love for Star Wars began the day I saw it, and I was lucky that I saw it before all of the hype started. It was 2 weeks before the opening, and there was a press screening on the back lot of 20th Century Fox. And so there were a bunch of journalists there, the old wizened, hard,
See,
hey, sweetie, get me coffee. And I got to say that I had the same reaction that so many people had. And the Star Destroyer comes overhead, and involuntarily your head goes up, and then you giggle to yourself because you know darn well that this is an incredible cinematic trick, because this thing just keeps coming, as Mel Brooks satirized in Spaceballs. And I fell in love with the movie that day, and there was something about it. I mean, movies and politics and life in America was really sort of dark in the 70s, and the movies were dark, therefore. And so George Lucas came up with this amazing movie that was fun. It was good guys versus bad guys. It was very clear who the good guys and the bad guys were. The good guys won in the end, at least temporarily. And there was this underlying mythology that didn't hit you over the head, but you sort of realized that Luke was on a journey, that Obi-Wan was the mentor, that the princess in distress was quite the opposite. She was a really strong woman. Firecracker indeed. And so all of those things combined for my immediate love of Star Wars, and then it sort of carried itself out in the collecting field after that.